Aloha and mahalo, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jimmy Selesky. You're watching live from the studio. Now, last time we touched base was just a day after the phenomenal, groundbreaking spectacle that was the first presidential debate of 2024 between Donald Trump and Uncle Joe, Dark Brandon Biden himself. And I probably could have gone on perhaps forever on that episode. I cut myself at an hour. But if I wanted to, I could still be doing that episode, just ranting and raving at how horrifically bad Biden's performance was in that debate. And where we left off, I wanted to get into on today's show where the Democrats go from here. What happens with Biden? And that's going to entail really three main points that I'll kind of summarize up front for you. The first of which being something we hinted at on the Friday show. Was this a setup for Biden? There's a lot of reasons I say that. There's the timing of the debate itself. There's the fact that his performance was notably bad, even by Biden's standards. It makes you wonder if maybe they didn't set him up with the typical drug cocktail they give him to prepare him for these type of things. Who knows? It makes you wonder if all of those things kind of culminate to this being part of a plan to undermine Biden and get him out of there before the Democratic National Convention. That's thing one. Secondly, the big question you'll hear a lot across all media is, can the Democrats replace Biden? Short answer, yes. Duh. This is something you don't really hear too often, but it bears repeating as often as possible. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, every political party, they are private companies. There is no mention of the Democratic Party in the Constitution or the Republican Party, nor the Independent Party, nor any party. They are private companies. They are no less a private company than Cheesecake Factory, AT&T Wireless, Tesla. They're private companies. They can do whatever the hell they want. Let me repeat. Yes, the Democrats can replace Biden. They can do whatever they want. That's like asking if AT&T can fire their CFO. Yeah, they can. Okay? So the question doesn't come down to, can the Democrats replace Biden? It comes down to, will they? Because the only rules that the Democratic Party has to abide by are their own rules. And technically, I guess, state election deadlines. They have to select their nominee in accordance with certain state election laws for when they can get on the ballot and stuff like that. That's obvious. That's a whole different thing. But in regards of who they can put up, there is no rules outlined in the Constitution about how the Democrats and Republicans can select their nominee, because they're not part of your government. They're private companies that are vying for positions within your government. They are management companies that put up representatives for the public that have become so ingrained in our political way of thinking that we have lost sight of the fact that they're actually not the government at all. They aren't. Okay? So again, we'll talk more in detail about the pledged delegates and all this bullshit. But at the end of the day, the Democrats can and will do whatever they want. If they decide that instead they want to select the nominee by who can win an arm wrestling match, guess what? They can do that. They can do that. Okay? So that's the big thing. Can they replace Joe Biden? Yes, they can. The real question is, will they? And I guess beyond that, the question would be, who will they replace him with? So I guess technically that's four things. Who's counting? Four things we're going to get into today. First, let's start here. I consider myself a fairly quote unquote based guy. I consider myself kind of based. I'm wearing a backwards hat. I'm based. But what I've realized is no one is ever quite as based as their comment section. Because I had a lot of you more based people in the comment section chastise me, understandably so, for being surprised at Joe Biden's performance. We all knew he was bad. Anybody who was surprised by this needs to wake up. This shouldn't be a surprise. We've known this for years. Yeah, dude, I get it. Okay, I get it. We all get that Joe Biden has been looking bad for quite some time. It's not exactly a secret, especially in conservative circles. It's been a highly talked about, highly discussed thing where we're constantly showing videos of Joe Biden forgetting where he is and shitting himself, whatever the hell they're saying he does. And even the Democrats, in kind of like whispers, it was kind of like an inside joke that Joe Biden was kind of not all the way there, but they were still able to hide it a little bit and deny it and gaslight you and be like, oh, actually he's great. But they all knew. Everybody knew. So we get that. I didn't get on here on Friday and say, what? What? Joe Biden isn't 100% with us? What a shock and surprise. That's not where I was coming from. Where I was coming from was saying that what we saw on Thursday was leaps and bounds beyond any expectations that most people had in terms of how bad Joe Biden really was. It was such a poor performance on Thursday that even the staunchest of Democrats can no longer even pretend that he is not gone. No matter how badly they want to spin it, no matter how badly they want to downplay it, they can't. They are in full panic mode. They are in full cope mode. They are in full, let's try to make this an us thing, as I said before, and try to be like, oh, these are our two options. Trump sucks and now Biden. No, don't make this an us thing. No, they are in full cope mode. They are in full panic mode. Okay? And that is because of this past week's performance. A few months ago, Joe Biden did the State of the Union address. Sure, there was a teleprompter. Sure, they probably got the drug cocktail of amphetamines and speedballs just right for that 1.5 hour performance during the State of the Union. And he did fine. It wasn't alarmingly bad. It wasn't great, but by Joe Biden standards, it was fine. This past week was bad, even by Joe Biden standards. And it was pathetic and pitiful by presidential standards. Beyond that, those words are understatements. So we get it. You knew Biden was bad. I knew Biden was bad. Everyone knew Biden was bad. I don't think very many people had any idea he was this bad, if we're being honest, okay? Now everyone knows. It's not just the conservatives. It's not just the Republicans talking about it anymore. Everyone's talking about it, okay? So in that way, it was a game changer. Moving in to the first question of the day. Was this a setup? Obviously, what transpires from this point forward will kind of determine the answer to that question. If Joe Biden is in fact removed and replaced, then I am actually very much more inclined to believe that this may have been part of a plan. It's hard to tell. Was this like a contingency, kind of like plan B, escape plan perhaps, where they were saying, look, let's have the debate early enough in the cycle so that if he completely blows it, there's still time to replace him? Or was this an overt attempt at saying, no, we're going to have this debate prior to the Democratic National Convention. We're going to not dose him up with whatever drugs he needs to actually sound semi-human-esque. And we're going to let him completely, figuratively and maybe literally shit himself in front of a national stage at the debate so that we can have a good cover to replace him prior to the convention. The timing itself, as we mentioned before on previous shows, the fact that this debate was held in June when prior to this election cycle, since 1960 when we started doing presidential debates, there has never been a debate earlier in an election year than September 21st. So this debate is 3 months earlier than the earliest presidential debate we've ever had in previous elections. It's 2 months prior to the Democratic National Convention. So the Democrats still technically have almost 2 months to determine their nominee. They've already held the primaries. That is true. Joe Biden already won the primary election. Donald Trump already won the primary election for the Republicans, but neither one of these two candidates are officially the nominee for their party as of right now. That's another unprecedented thing where we have a debate between two presidential candidates that aren't even actually officially the nominees for their parties yet. So there's a lot of anomalies. There's a lot of oddities surrounding this entire situation that makes you kind of perhaps suspect that there's a reason for that this was held this far out from an election to give Democrats options should something go wrong. Because God forbid, let's say, they had this debate on a normal timeline well after the Democratic National Convention, 2 months before the election in September and October, and Joe Biden manages to put up this very same performance, and now they have no way out. They have no escape hatch. And even worse yet, it's merely a few weeks outside of the election, which means that this will still be fresh in people's mind going into the polls. So I think for all those reasons, it is a very reasonable suggestion to speculate that this could have been part of the plan to get Joe Biden out. Moving on to the next question. Can they? As I stated in the beginning of the episode, yes. Yes. You're going to hear a lot of political pundits, slow down the conversation to fill out their advertising hours by talking about pledged delegates and, all these other technicalities and other bullshit that is not relevant to the conversation. You're wasting your time. Sometimes the devil is literally in the details, meaning that sometimes it's you lose the forest for the trees when you focus too much on the technicalities and nuances of a situation. The answer is that a private party can do whatever they want. They would not be breaking any constitutional rules whatsoever by violating their own election laws that they make up for themselves. Are they going to sue themselves? Now, obviously, there's probably some weird, annoying, lawyerish bullshit that I'm unaware of where a state could sue for this, that they're, whatever. That's all small potatoes. When you're dealing with a general election and there is this much internal strife within your party and this much division and non-enthusiasm and uncertainty in your own party for the candidate that you're taking into 2024 November, they will deal with all of that, whatever that is. At the end of the day, the reality is there's no situation where the Supreme Court steps in and says, no, Joe Biden has these pledged delegates. You can't replace him. They can do whatever they want. The pledged delegates, all of this stuff is just internal party rules. Okay, so obviously what the Democrats want to do is figure out a way to get Biden out of there without breaking their own rules. Because it's a bad look when you break your own rules. Much like we saw in the 2016 election where Bernie Sanders, even though he was competing quite well and quite evenly with Hillary Clinton in the primaries that year, in terms of popular election votes among the states, Hillary Clinton had almost unanimously locked down the, quote, super delegates. The super delegates are unpledged freelance delegates, just party officials and people within high ranks of the Democratic Party that simply cast their vote, and their vote counts for as much as half of a state or something. So even if Bernie were to win the state votes among the people, among the base, Hillary Clinton basically still would have won that primary just because all the superdelegates, all the party establishment, all the party officials that had overpowering votes were going to outnumber and negate any popular vote that would have put Bernie in. And this was really the American public's, not just the Democratic Party, but really the American public's first taste of understanding that not only are these parties not beholden to any type of American electoral rules, they set their own rules, they set their own requirements and systems for how things are selected. But beyond that, they're going to do what they're going to do. And that was a really clear kind of exhibition, a clear display of the Democratic Party being like, look, this is who we want in. We want Hillary Clinton to be the nomination. Now, we're going to have a primary election to give our base the illusion of choice. But at the end of the day, all the party establishment is backing Hillary Clinton. And basically, there's no clear path to victory for Bernie Sanders unless he unanimously wins every state and manages to sway some party officials. Other than that, the party is going to get who they want as the nominee, and the people can go fuck themselves. And so that's kind of, people saw that. They saw that the party was going to pick who they were going to pick regardless. And they also saw that there were no rules against that. And just as I said earlier in this episode, they can do that however they want. The only reason these parties have primary elections at all is not because they have to, but because they need to in order to make the base feel like they're actually represented by the party. If you didn't allow your base to vote for the nominee, then the base would be like, we don't have any say in this. Why would we support this party? So you need the base to feel like they have a say. But at the end of the day, clearly, as we've seen, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. So those are the two things to keep in mind. In regards to 2024, yes, the Democrats have their election system in place, as do the Republicans. But at this current juncture, particularly post-debate, the fact that Joe Biden won the primary vote, basically just uncontested. I mean, he was literally almost uncontested. His number one opponent in the primary election this year was no one. Uncommitted votes were the second most popular candidate in the Democratic primary election. In a contest between Joe Biden and no one, Joe Biden edged him out. Joe Biden edged out no one. And so now going into the Democratic National Convention, all these delegates that are representing the popular vote of their respective states are in fact pledged to vote in favor of what their state voted for, which is every state was Joe Biden. I think American Samoa, a territory, there was a guy who won in American Samoa. So Joe Biden lost one territory in the entire primary, and that was American Samoa. Outside of that, Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee. Unless a few things happen. The easiest way for this to go over would be for Joe Biden to step down. Joe Biden steps down. That puts the party in a position to hold some type of new open convention, snap election. I don't know what they would do. They would decide that for themselves, how they want to go about it. But ultimately, what probably will happen if Joe Biden should step down is the party will come together and select a new candidate. They probably won't involve the public. They probably won't. They're not going to go through the process of holding an entirely new primary election. I don't know if they have time for that. I don't know if they're interested in doing that. They're just going, Joe Biden steps down and the Democratic Party installs the new nominee. And we'll get into who that could be in a moment. But first, let's just discuss the options. Secondly, the Democratic Party, the delegates, the people who will be casting the votes for the official nomination in August at the convention could revolt or boycott or something along those lines. And again, this would be all internal affairs within the party. There would be nothing technically illegal about this. This would not be a Supreme Court issue. This would not be any type of issue whatsoever. All this would be is internal strife within the party. It would obviously be a bad look for the Democratic Party to have this much internal strife within their own base, but that's a real possibility because the Democrats, even before this debate, were already batting around the idea of holding a hybrid, semi-virtual convention in Chicago because they're worried about disruptors from their own side. They're not worried about Trump supporters and white supremacists and Proud Boys and whoever else they tell you is the biggest threats to national security. They're not worried about those guys coming and messing with the Democratic National Convention. They're worried about Democrats disrupting, protesting, and obstructing their own convention because that's how much division is within that party. You have an entire progressive wing of that party that is ravenous, that will stop at nothing, that is unsatisfiable. They are incorrigible. There's nothing you can do for them. They thrive off of discontentment. That is their reason for existence is to be pissed off about something. And currently what they're pissed off about is Palestine. And they're not happy about how Joe Biden's handling the conflict in Israel and Palestine. And he's Genocide Joe. Now, unfortunately for these poor souls in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, they don't seem to have put together yet that Joe Biden is in fact not the one making these decisions. I don't know how you could have possibly watched that debate on Thursday and have not come to that conclusion, at least by now. If you didn't realize that a month ago, whatever. But if you don't realize that now, if you watch that debate and still think Joe Biden's in the Situation Room making the final calls on what Israel's allowed to do and how we're going to deal with Palestine, no. And I don't say this to be some crazy conspiracy theorist guy, because I know that's like a conspiracy theorist type of terminology, a shadow government and stuff. No, there is literally an administration operating and running our government, controlling our policies, controlling what this country is doing, both domestically and abroad, that is running under the face of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the figurehead. He is there to sign whatever bill comes across his desk. He is not in a position to be making these decisions. So the progressives are misled in thinking that this is a Joe Biden thing. Or, perhaps it's bigger than that for them and they realize that this is an entire party thing as well. But their main vitriol seems to be aimed at getting rid of Joe Biden and putting somebody else as a nominee. Regardless, they were already considering taking measures with this convention in August to deal with the amount of division and unrest that already existed within their base before this debate. After this debate, you're not only going to have the Palestine people camping out in brand new tents and demanding vegan granola bars for human aid, but you're also going to have, I would imagine, just maybe even regular Democrats at this point who are completely disillusioned at the idea that their nominee is someone who is clearly unfit to serve. And I don't mean unfit to serve like the way they try to say Donald Trump is unfit to serve in that we really don't like him and therefore he's unfit to serve. No, I mean like this guy is literally unfit to serve, whether you like him or not. He could be the best world's number one grandpa. He's not fit to serve. That's just the reality. And virtually everyone's on the same page with that. I'm sure that, look, even the most liberal, off their rocker people that I follow on Instagram, social media, stuff like that, Twitter, they're tweeting out things like, remember, we're not voting for the person, we're voting for the policies. Yeah, Joe Biden is clearly not the man he used to be, but remember who we're up against, this terrible Trump guy. And so even their new line of attack is being look, guys, let's just ignore the fact that it's Joe Biden for a second and just once again redirect our attention to the fact that he's not Trump. Because again, that's been the platform for the past 8 years for the Democrats, which is we're not Trump. But now Biden has gotten so bad that just pointing at Trump isn't enough anymore. So now we have to point at Trump and also point away from Biden in this direction to be but look at the policies. What policies, you ask? I don't know. The Democrats don't really spend too much time talking about policies. They spend a lot more time talking about Donald Trump's court cases and they spend more time talking about Trump's policies than they talk about their own policies. Let me put it that way. I think that's an actually legitimately fair statement to make. So the Democrats are completely lost right now. They are completely lost. And so what they're going to have to try to do, ideally, is Biden steps down. That probably won't happen. Unless he is coerced or threatened in some way. Look, if the Democrats want him out, he's going to be out. That's just reality. One way or the other, he is out. And as we mentioned before, I can't see a situation where the Democrats try to ride this out through November. If the Democrats don't make a move and run with Joe Biden, they are essentially conceding the election, because even if they planned on stealing the election for the first time ever, and definitely not also in 2020, but even if they were, hypothetically, for the first time ever, they even thought of imagining the idea of rigging an election, even that wouldn't work. In order to pull off a semi-believable steal, in order to pull off a steal at all, the election has to be within range. The reason why they hypothetically would have maybe been able to do that in certain swing states overnight during the 2020 election, hypothetically speaking, is because it only takes a few counties in a handful of swing states to turn all the electoral votes for that state. In a state like Pennsylvania or Georgia, where it comes down to a couple thousand votes, you can do that in a couple counties. And now all of a sudden, all 20, 30 electoral votes from that state, just in a matter of 1,000 vote swing, go from Trump to Biden or vice versa. So it's actually it takes way less to swing an election than people think. I think people think it takes millions and millions of votes and falsified records. No, it takes like a couple thousand in a couple handful of places across the country. It's very doable, and that's why it was doable. But in this situation, it's not doable because no one would believe it. Even the people that want Biden to win would not actually believe he won. Every single thing that they have tried in this election cycle to undermine Trump's campaign has failed and backfired. Not just failed, but backfired. Trump is doing better in the polls after this whole Stormy Daniels bullshit felony 34 counts conviction thing. If they try to sentence him to jail in a couple weeks, when his sentencing hearing happens, which I still believe could be likely, I don't know, it'll help him even more. Because especially after Biden's debate performance, it becomes more and more clear that they have nothing, and that is the reason why all these politically motivated attacks on Trump have been occurring. Everyone's coming to realize that. Some of us have known that way longer than others, but it doesn't matter. Welcome to the dark side. Welcome to whatever side you want to call it. But everyone is coming to the realization that all of these court cases and personal attacks and all the above that have been levied against Trump for the past 8 years since he announced his candidacy in 2015, they have been clearly politically motivated. They are in large part completely unbased. And some of us have known that longer than others, but who cares? Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard to all who are coming to this realization, whether it was years ago or a year ago or yesterday or tomorrow. Welcome aboard, because the more people we bring aboard to understanding this insanity that we're living through at the current moment, the better. The harder it will be to be tricked again. And this is really the calamity that they find themselves in. They can't steal the election because it would be too obvious. It's not even within cheating range. They can't win it outright with Biden. That's even more ridiculous. Nobody would believe it. Nobody hates Trump enough to put this man in office. That narrative may have worked in 2020. It can't work again. Trump looked too normal in that debate. He looked too good, dare I say, in this most recent debate for people to be convinced that enough Americans hate him so much that they would rather vote for the other guy in that debate. There's too much division in the Democratic Party itself for people to believe that Biden has that level of support still, or at all, or ever, really, at this point. So now the question becomes, look, the Democrats are in panic mode. They have very few options, if any, that don't involve getting rid of Joe Biden. So with that being said, assuming that if they want Joe Biden out, he's out, who takes his place? Now, if this was a normal, non-corrupt, non-bullshit political party, the obvious answer to that question would be Kamala Harris, right? She's the vice president. What happens when the president is unable to serve for one reason or another? He's sick, he's ill, which is the same thing, by the way. I just like saying more words to sound smarter. He's dead. That's like even worse than being sick or ill by all accounts. Or in this case, he's just unfit to serve. He just can't serve. Well, wouldn't that make the vice president next in line? Yeah, obviously, but here's the problem. No one fucking likes Kamala Harris. No one ever did. No one ever liked Kamala Harris, especially now. And what does that say about the Democratic Party as a whole? When nobody likes the guy who's about to run for office as your nominee, nobody likes him, nobody thinks he can do it, nobody understands why he's there. He was just literally the only option versus no one. It was Joe Biden or no one. Those are your two choices for the most part in virtually every state on any significant level. So he just is installed as your nominee, uncontested. Nobody likes him. And also, nobody likes his vice president. And no one is even taking seriously the idea that should Joe Biden be declared unfit to serve, the obvious successor, the obvious replacement on that ticket would be his running mate. His running mate. The person who served as the vice president of the United States under this man for the past 4 years and is intending on doing so again for the next 4 years. But this administration, this campaign is so unpopular, even within their own party, that Kamala Harris is barely even in the top 3 names for consideration of who's going to replace Joe Biden. And you expect the people within that party to think that their vote actually matters? Could you imagine Donald Trump picks a vice president that the Republican Party actually is in support of? Like, he picks a guy like Vivek or, any of those guys, JD Vance, any like good Republican that is generally respected by the base. I would say probably the best example of this for the purpose of example, let's go with Vivek. Let's say Trump picks Vivek. I don't think that's what it's going to be, honestly, because that would just be too awesome. And sometimes God gives us a hand-me-down like he did on Thursday with the debate. He threw us a bone there and was just like, enjoy this one for the next fucking 10 years talking about it. But for God to also give us a Vivek Trump running ticket, that would be too much. I don't even want to ask for that. But maybe we'll just try speaking it into existence right now. Let's imagine Trump picks Vivek as his vice president. And for one reason or other, Trump is unable to serve his term. Could you imagine the Republican base being like, well, we ain't putting Vivek up then. We hate Vivek. You can't imagine it, because that's what happens when you have a nominee that is actually representative of their party. The nominee and the vice presidential nominee, their running mate, are people that are there because their party likes them. That's how it's supposed to work. When you're in a corrupt political party, I'm not saying the Republicans aren't corrupt, but I guess I am saying that the Democrats are more corrupt. The Republicans aren't corrupt enough in many people's opinions. They're corrupt when it comes to policy, but they're way too content with playing the Pepsi to the Democrats' Coke for the next 100 years. They're way too content playing second fiddle. They're way too content being cheated out of an election in 6 ways from Sunday, whether it be through media censorship or just outright rigging of votes. They're way too content with that and rolling over and taking it so as not to tarnish their reputation by seeming too cavalier by challenging it or questioning democracy. They're too content. Sometimes I wish the Republicans would sack up a little more and, I don't know, fight fire with fire. I'm not saying become cheaters and stuff like that, but I am saying, like, stick your neck out a little bit and be willing to call a foul every once in a while, as opposed to getting fucked over and doing the Caitlin Clark thing. We're like, hey, that's just a basketball play. No disrespect to Caitlin Clark, but the same way that she in the WNBA is just constantly getting knocked around for no fucking reason, and then just has to sit there and be like, well, it's just we're just playing basketball out here. Meanwhile, in her head she's like, fuck these bitches. That's kind of what the Republicans are doing. They get screwed over by the Democrats left and right in every way imaginable, constantly called racist and this, that, the third, and they just take it. They just try to push forward with this, like, and we believe in lowering the taxes for all. Do something, man. So, okay, when you have a political party that's as corrupt as we're seeing with the Democrats, you're literally watching their nominee, their unanimous nominee from every state voting for Joe Biden, except for the American Samoa, which is even a state. And neither he nor his running mate are well liked enough by the party itself to be even considered to actually be the person running in 2024. Yet he's the presumptive nominee. How does that happen? How does that happen unless you have a political party that has rigged things so hard, that is dispelled of the public sentiment so hard that you just get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? That's who you get, Democrats. Have you noticed how unsatisfied you are with your nominee? Do you think perhaps that is some sort of insight into how little of a say you actually have? Do you think that's a possibility? Is it possible that the reason why you and your entire base are so dissatisfied, so disillusioned with your nominees going into this election, could it be that the reason why that is the case is because you never had a say in the first place? They installed Joe Biden just like they installed Hillary Clinton. They gave you the illusion of thinking that it was your idea to install Joe Biden. And now, Biden has gone so far in decline, even though this was pitched to you guys in 2020, that this was just a temporary thing. Biden's going to step in for 4 years just to kind of right the ship, and then it's going to be, we're going to pass the baton off. That's not happening. Biden's not stepping down. So I guess that backfired in some way. They thought they were going to get Biden in as a patsy, and he's not leaving now, I guess, is the situation. I don't know. Regardless, clearly he's not leaving, at least by his own accord. And now the narrative is, oh, it was your fault, guys. It was your fault. You guys all voted for Biden in the primaries, but look, the party's going to have to step in and get rid of this guy. And I think you guys agree at this point, right? Now that you realize how wrong you were 2 months ago when you voted to install him, uncontested, when you voted for Joe Biden versus no one in this primary election. But now it's the party's job, and you should actually, and you are thanking us. Thank us later, guys. We're going to step in and get Biden out of here and install a different person. We're not going to hold another election, probably. We're just going to get rid of the guy that we made you think you put there in the first place, which you did not. But God forbid the idea ever gets out that, hold up, what we're literally watching here, if I'm a Democrat, is a candidate and a vice candidate who were installed against our will twice, who have backfired so hard that now they need to be removed. And so the way they're going to remove them is by making it seem like Biden is the problem, right? That's really the goal here. Because God forbid, again, the idea ever got out that, wait, Biden hasn't been running the show this entire time. Biden has not been making the executive calls. He is not sitting in that room being the game-changing decision maker. He's not steering the ship. So the state of our country, all these global conflicts erupting, the Ukraine-Russia thing, the Israel-Palestine thing, inflation, the border, everything that's been going to shit over the past 4 years. Now, the Democrats are going to step in and try to spin it as if that was just a Biden problem. Oh, see, look how bad he is. We're going to get rid of Biden. That was a Biden problem. It wasn't an us problem. It wasn't us steering the ship the whole time as a party and as a bureaucracy. It was the Biden problem. So that's what it means to be a patsy. You put somebody in there to enact your corrupt policies, your horrendous decision-making, your self-destructive ideas, and institutionalize them for your own self-benefit and no one else's at the expense of the country. And then you go, oh my God, wait, what? This guy, get him out. No, my God, did you not see that debate? We need to get this guy out of here. Oh my God. I can't believe we all didn't notice it. Yeah, he actually is bad. Get rid of him. I tell you what, we'll install someone else and it'll be way better. So vote for us. That's what they're going to try to do. And I'm talking to you, Democrats. I'm talking to you. We all need to get on the same page here. I'm glad. I feel genuinely like people are moving towards the same page. It's a beautiful thing to watch, but it took Joe Biden borderline shitting himself on stage on Thursday night for Americans to kind of come together in a weird way. Like, the more reasonable Democrat liberal people that I'm coming across now are kind of on the same page. Like, yeah, this is not a good look. We need to figure something out here. And that's a good place to be, because that brings you one step closer to now that you understand that Biden is a joke and an embarrassment and corrupt and everything else and not fit to serve. That means you're one step closer to understanding that, no, it's not Biden, guys. It's whoever the hell is behind Biden is the problem. And they're very competent at fucking you over. And they're very competent at serving themselves, not you. They could be if that was their goal, but it's not. That's the problem. So it's a step-by-step process, but it seems like we're getting there. Now, again, was that purposeful? Or was it an accident that Biden floundered so hard in this debate? That's up in the air. I guess only time will tell. Time will tell. But in the meantime, again, who would they replace him with? Who are they going to install in his place if he's out? We already touched upon Kamala Harris. It ain't going to be her. Again, it should really say something that the guy's own vice president is so unliked that she's not the top pick for his replacement. That's kind of crazy, being as how that's her literal job, is to be his replacement. But she's not even really discussed seriously as a potential option. That's how much of a joke, patsy, installed clown she is. So who are the real considerations? Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama. Those are the two names. And I'm going to go ahead and say it ain't going to be Gavin Newsom. It probably won't be Gavin Newsom. I think they have bigger plans for Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom has put in his hours as a slimy, incompetent, failing up, does whatever the party wants him to do, destroys his own state politician that is required in order to be a nominee for president. He's put in that work, and I think they have 8-year plans for him. I don't think they want his entry into politics to be as some sort of savior, another right the ship campaign, because that's what this is going to be. The 2024 election, as far as the Democrats are concerned, is yet another, let's just get somebody in there that can get us, back on our feet. That's what 2020 was supposed to be, but now that's also become 2024, in case you're starting to notice a pattern that every election is we just need to figure this shit out election for the past, I don't know how many years. But I don't think they want that to be Gavin Newsom. I think they look at Gavin Newsom as kind of like the future of the party. Either that or they're looking at people like AOC and Ilhan Omar, which I don't think they're the future of the party. I think they're the present of the party. I think that when people think of Democrats, AOC and people like that are the most famous, most recognizable names. And those politicians, those people don't really appeal that much to the general American population. They appeal very strongly, I guess, to the progressives in the Democratic Party, but even the moderate sides of the Democratic Party aren't crazy about their radical squad. And obviously the Republicans aren't. Obviously the independents aren't. The moderates aren't. So although the squad and people like that in the Democratic Party are the most popular, they're the most viral on social media, they're the most discussed, they're the most relevant, they are the present of the Democratic Party, which is the problem. That's literally the problem, is that their present is not that of a moderate platform. It is that of a radical platform. Their current face of their party is a face that does not really appeal to anyone who isn't hard left. So the Democrats are trying desperately to get back to some sort of a moderate image. And I think that they think that's Gavin Newsom. He's a good-looking guy. He's not overtly radical, even though his policies are, radical as they come, and he's destroyed California with those type of policies. But he doesn't come off as that type of guy. He doesn't come off as a loose cannon like AOC. He comes off as a even keel, well-spoken. He is well-spoken. He is articulate. He is seemingly intelligent. He's like a classical politician. He's what a politician's supposed to be. A soft voice, a well-spoken delivery, and behind the scenes doing the same shit everybody's doing to screw you over. And that's Gavin Newsom. That's what he's good at. I think the Democrats want desperately just to get back to that. They want desperately to get back to their typical middle-of-the-road Democrat politician, Obama-esque type of guy, you know? And I don't think they're going to waste him on this because they understand that this is going to be a throwaway of a year. They understand that probably whoever runs this year is going to lose, at least if they play it fairly. The only play I could see them, as we discussed before as well, is can they install a candidate last minute before the convention in compliance with all state ballot laws or whatever else actually matters that determines their timeline for this? Can they install a candidate that is popular enough and appealing enough that people would at least be willing to believe they might have won? Because again, this doesn't come down to can they win. If you're a cheater, you're not concerned, can I win? You're concerned, can I make people believe I won? Notice the difference. If the Democrats are willing, potentially, to steal the election, it's not about winning, it's about constructing a narrative that seems believable enough to convince people that you didn't steal it. Michelle Obama is probably that person. As ridiculous as it sounds, that simply having been married to a president makes you, in fact, qualified to be president. That doesn't qualify in any other job. It doesn't qualify you to be a pilot if you're married to a pilot. It doesn't qualify to be a doctor if you're married to a doctor. Doesn't qualify you to be a NFL quarterback if you're married to an NFL quarterback. But it does apparently qualify you to be the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the free world. As silly as that is, that Michelle Obama is probably the top contender for the takeover from Joe Biden, she kind of is. She literally kind of is. And I think that because of Obama's legacy, the same way that in very large part helped Joe Biden out as well, despite the main boost being that he wasn't Trump, it also didn't hurt that he was Obama's vice president. So Michelle Obama also has the Obama card because she literally is an Obama. She's Obama's wife. She was first lady for 8 years. And again, although that doesn't necessarily qualify you to be president by any sensible stretch of the imagination, it apparently does by every other stretch of the imagination in every way. So should they install Michelle Obama? I don't think Michelle Obama can win that election. But again, it's not about whether or not Michelle Obama can win that election. It's about whether or not people would be willing to believe that she might have. It's about whether or not they can construct a narrative around the idea of the Democrats being true to their base and honest to their people and removing Joe Biden when the base was no longer in support of him, and instead taking someone that is much more popular among their base, putting her in there. She's a legacy of a president we all knew and trusted. She's a, not just a legacy of that, but she is like an extension of that because obviously Barack Obama is going to have a say in this. Obviously, the idea that Michelle Obama's government is going to be completely different than Barack Obama's government is a ridiculous idea. Obviously, if you vote for Michelle Obama, you're just getting another however many years of Barack Obama, obviously. So that could be sold to the narrative as, well, now we're essentially getting a referendum on Trump versus the 2008 to 2016 Obama. And people are tired of the past 8 years of the political climate. We want to go back to a time when things were just normal and the worst thing our president ever did was wear a tan suit or whatever. And, this well-spoken, just someone people trust that cares about the people. And yeah, and especially after everything we've seen, like people just wanted to get away from the Trump-Biden narrative. We just wanted something new, fresh start, Michelle Obama. And even though that's not going to be the case, they might be able to sell that. They might be able to pull off some type of fuckery and sell you that. And I guess the last option is the option of just punting it. And by punting it, I mean just take the L this time around, guys. There's a new election every 4 years, as often as the World Cup, as often as the Olympics. You can't win every election. In fact, if you do win every election, it starts to look a little sus. Nobody wants to feel like it's bad enough we live in a duopoly, a political duopoly, a two-party political system, even though it's not supposed to be that way. But once people start getting the vibe that we actually live in a mono-party, that, it's just straight up Democrats always win. It can't be that. So you kind of need to, even if you are cheating, you kind of need to pick and choose when you lose. You can't always win. That's way too obvious. So maybe this is one of those years where you just take the L. I don't think there's any better of a year to take the L. I mean, the L is there. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to take it. You know, your plan backfired. Your patsy administration, Biden-Harris, backfired. Biden wasn't even able to keep it together enough to appear mildly coherent. It backfired. Now he's not leaving. Now you're going to have to take next level steps to right the ship before the convention. And who knows what that's going to be. But if you do decide to ride it out with Biden, he can't debate again. You're going to have to put Trump in jail, at least for the next few months, which is very possible unless the Supreme Court steps in. And that way Biden will be able to avoid the debate in September. And this June debate we just witnessed will be a fairly distant memory by November. It'll be 5 months ago almost. And Biden loses and everybody is kind of okay with that. And everybody understands that. Everybody is going to blame Biden for that, or they're going to blame the Democrats. But at the end of the day, they're still going to vote Democrat. So it doesn't matter, at least the way you think it'll play out. And that'll be that. That'll be that. And you take the L and move on. Honestly, obviously, that would be the best move. You know, I'm not going to say putting Trump in jail and avoiding the next debate, but you kind of have to like ride it out with dignity. You have to figure out a way to save face. It's kind of like when you're in a bar fight with a guy that you clearly know is going to kick your ass, but you can't look like a complete bitch. You have to kind of look like you wanted to fight. So you have to kind of like chirp a little bit, not back down, not let him completely punk you, but still avoid the actual fight. You don't want to actually fight. You know, maybe have your friend hold you back a little bit. I'm not saying I do this, but like this is like the psychology. It's like the guy who doesn't want to fight but wants to look like he wants to fight. Wants to look like he's restraining himself. So that's kind of what the Democrats need to do at this point. If they're going to just stay with Biden or whatever they do, they at least have to just look like they're trying to fight. That way they can walk out of this election with their heads held somewhat not on the ground and preserve whatever dignity they have left after the past year especially has exposed them fully for what they are, which is, I mean, this whole situation is so fucked beyond belief. I cannot imagine the type of conversations that are going on in the internal affairs, the higher levels of this party. They're completely unraveled. They're completely embarrassed. Unless this was all planned out, which, I mean, more credit to them, because if their plan was to embarrass themselves or embarrass Joe Biden, and basically put the base in complete panic mode to renominate someone else instead, then that they really succeeded in that plan. I mean, they nailed that plan. 10 out of 10 if that was your goal, guys. I'm going to give you big props if that's the case. But assuming it might not be the case, jeez Louise. Good going, guys. This is what happens. You fuck around, you always find out. We know this. So who knows what we're going to find out in the coming weeks. Who knows? There's all kinds of things on the horizon. This thing is just getting started, guys. This thing is just getting started. I have a feeling that the next few months are going to be some wild and crazy times. I really believe that. I really do. I've been saying it for a while and I will not stop saying it. So with no further ado, folks, thanks for tuning in. My name is Jimmy Selesky. You're watching live from the studio. New content on this channel every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Leave me a like, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Till next time, peace.